The problem that we've got in addressing this is you can't deal with it one issue at a time. For example, if you look at the last 8 years, housing costs grew 1.5 times faster than income, but gas prices grew 7 times faster than housing and 11 times faster than income. And it doesn't seem to add up in that situation. Now, we had it right once. If you go back 100 years ago, transportation was only 3 to 5% of household expenditures. The home economics movement was a financial literacy movement. It hadn't gotten sex role stereotyped yet. They told you, keep your car fare, which meant streetcar fare, under 5% of your expenses. Keep your heat, light, and power to 2% of your expenses. It was like, do it or you'll go to hell, right? I mean, and my favorite admonition was, don't you ever, ever, ever go into debt for an automobile. From 1885 to 1902, we went from 1 electric streetcar in America to 1 in every city of 5,000 or more. And this resulted in turn in a high household savings rate. Now this region, I counted. Where did I count? I'm compulsive. I carry around my own real copy of the McGraw Electric Railway Directory. And 1924, y'all welcome to look at it later. Come to my session, right? This region had 1,332 miles of street railways. It says 480 of them in paved streets, which tells you something. Several thousand vehicles, half of which were carrying freight on the street railroads. So this is one reason why things weren't quite as congested. And it connected all parts of the region to each other, not necessarily ideally. But if you went to the downtowns of any of the streets, they'd look just like this picture. This happens to be Spokane, Washington. And you probably can't read the postcard label. It says, Riverside Avenue, a busy street in progressive Spokane. And what do you see? What you see is real. You saw streetcars and cars and still a few horse-drawn vehicles and people coexisting with each other. You see mixed-use, mixed-income development, we would call it today. And this is what people were used to seeing. And why did it work? It worked because it provided what today we'd call an economy of scope, similar to what the internet does. And here's how I explain it. When Bell invented the telephone, it was useless until he built a second one and he had somebody to talk to, right? And then when he had the third one, it got even better. You get to an economy of scale differently than the bigger the better. You get to it by the more participants, the better, which is not a bad model for an organizer either. And the streetcar networks and the street networks of America grew off of each other. And the one other thing I want to say before I get into this a little more is that there was streets were sort of destiny. Cities didn't have the money to build streets. So they franchised the use of the streets to transportation operators. The streetcar operators would get exclusive franchises, and the historians all said they were crooks, and most of them were. But the other side of it was that those franchises required the streetcar companies, which were raising their money around the country and around the world. They were all for profits to share in the cost of building the streets and maintaining them. So let's see what this did in a place. Here's Columbus, Ohio. In 1879, horse-drawn street railway. 1902, same intersection, electric street railway. 1912, electric street railway and a car. The guy with the umbrella, that was the traffic cop, two-tone. One side been stopped, the other one go. They automated that. And the maps looked like this map of Atlanta. You have to imagine these maps were available in every library in the country. They told you that the closer you were to mass transit, the more valuable the property. And there was always a peak value intersection someplace where 2 or more lines came together. So this was an early form of measuring location efficiency and value creation and value capture. And so people, it was a virtuous circle. And as a result of all this, if you look at household budgets back then, food was 41% of household expenditures, housing 27%, transportation 3%. Now today food is 16%, housing 25 to 35 or slightly more here, transportation 15 to 35, and transportation franchises provided anywhere from 3 to 16% in LA of municipal budgets. Well, Cities got greedy. They let cars come in because they could make money off of taxing them. That crowded the streetcar systems out. We abandoned our transit systems. Too many places looked like this. Public policy favored a different vision. If you can't read that, the banner on the left says Miss Concrete. The one on the right says Miss Blacktop. Anybody who believes that's an artifact ought to go to one of the road builders conventions, by the way. And Will Rogers noted back in 1932 that we'd be the first generation in the history of the planet that drove to the poorhouse in an automobile. Now, a couple of us got together, and I want to just recognize John Holtzclaw, who's been a great partner for 2 decades here. You got a wonderful asset in the Bay Area. And along with David Goldstein and Hank Dittmar, we postulated that people who live in more convenient places drive less. They don't give you awards for common sense like that, but we figured out how to formalize it. And by looking at proximity and frequency and connectivity and how close you are to what you do, we could then verify our guess, our statistical guess, by measuring vehicle ownership and extent of use, and then we could put a dollar and cent figure on it. Everybody's going to get tested on this impenetrably dense equation. And did you catch that? I want to make sure. All right. So it's a little easier to visualize with this curve, which we drew for San Francisco, LA, and Chicago. 6 million households worth of data. The denser it is, the less people drive. And the equation pretty much gives you a good guess, plus or minus 5%, 92% of the time. So let's map it now really quickly for Chicago, and let's see what it looks like for the Bay Area. Good transit access yields 1 less car per household. You want to be in one of those green areas, and you notice the closer you are to the transit lines, the greener it is. It's green in between because it's not just transit. It's good streets, it's good connectivity, it's walkability, it's access to amenity. And having 1 less car per household lowers the cost of living net of transit by $5,000 to $6,000 a year. That's the equivalent of increasing income by 10 to 15% tax-free. Now then we said, suppose, how many people own a home? Let's just have a show of hands. Got to get a stretching exercise in there. How many people own a home?
For how long?
How many people still own their home after last year? So the map on the left is Cook County, and in those green areas, first-time home buyers earning $35,000 to $40,000 a year could afford to be qualified. I don't know what to call that pukey color in the middle. They say power corrupts, PowerPoint corrupts absolutely. But and that's where you would target down payment assistance and counseling. The red area is just too expensive. But in the map on the right, we've taken those savings from the previous map and put it into the same equation. And what do you know? Most of Cook County is potentially affordable. So we invented a program called the Location Efficient Mortgage Program, tried it out. About 2,000 households got them in 2001 to 2004. And I testified to Congressman Barney Frank's committee last summer after calling around to bank loan officers. As far as I could tell, out of 2,000 loans, I could only find 1 default. And we were asked the question, how much would it cost to subsidize the program? And our answer was, wrong question. This outperformed the market. And I'm happy to say that Congressman Perlmutter from Denver has introduced a bill. It almost made it through last year, made it through the House, Senate failed. It's just been reintroduced, called the Green Communities Act, and you should all know about HR 2336 and tell your congressman to support it, because it would make location efficient and energy efficient mortgages universally available. They're also mentioned in an agreement that was reached March 16th by newly minted Secretary Sean Donovan of HUD, and it's Ray LaHood, not Roy LaHood, but you can be forgiven. I got it wrong too, first time. See, to promote alternative underwriting together and alternative planning, and to align consolidated housing and transportation planning, and you should encourage that too.